All right, we're going to talk about structs. Now, structs are user-defined data types. Now, we've created our own data type here. It's called employee, and to do this, we use the Golang keyword type. So the Golang keyword type is going to be followed by the name of our data type, and this one is of type struct. Now, a struct is just a sequence of fields. So I have my first field here, named first name, and it's of type string. I have my second field here, called last name, of type string. Got my third field here of ID of type int, and so on and so on. So this is really great in that it allows us to tie together a bunch of related data. So we're creating our variable John, and it's of type employee, which we just created up here. And here are our fields that we're assigning. So we have first name, and then we use a semicolon between field name and the value, and so it assigns the string John to it, and then that's separated by a comma, and just, and so on and so on. So to print all this related data, all we have to do is just pass the name of our struct. There we go. Now, if you didn't want to use a struct, it gets pretty messy. So just to kind of show that point, we went ahead and created an employee without a struct. So we have Carl here, Carl's first name, Carl last name, ID, salary, address, phone number, and etc. So this is just using regular variables. But one thing you would notice is once you start using a lot of data, you're going to run into some problems. So here we're going to go ahead and print off all the data related to Carl. As you can see, we can still print all this off, but being that all these variables are not tied together, they're not really related, according, at least from the compiler's standpoint, we have to enter each one of these variables. Now, if you could imagine, let's say we have a function we want to use and we want to change, let's say 100 employees. So I could create an array of employee and put 100 employees in there and just pass it in and run a function. Now, on the other hand, I couldn't make an array of all these different values because some of these are strings, some of these are ints, some of these are floats. So it would be a huge mess, and just the number of variables I'd have to pass in to run that function, it just wouldn't look good at all. Now, anyway, back to structs. If we want to access just a single field, we just use dot notation. So we have our variable John, and we just use a dot and then last name, and that should print just the last name. There we go, and it's Smith. And let's say we want to go ahead and create another employee, but we don't want to put in all the fields. Let's say we just want to pass in 2 different fields. You can do that, but just be aware that all the other fields are going to be given their 0 value. So ints are going to be 0, floats are going to be 0, strings are going to be empty strings, and so on and so on. And to reassign one of these, it works the same way. Just use the name of your variable, use the dot notation, and then just say what you want to change. This one we're changing ID 12, and there we go. It was 0, and it is now 12. And if you didn't want to assign any values from the start, you can just create a variable like we are here, a variable named Jane. It's of type employee, and let's go ahead and print that off. And as you can see, when it prints this off, we haven't assigned any values yet. We're just getting the 0 value. So an empty string, and so on and so on. And we can just use dot notation to assign values after. And as you can see, those are assigned to it. Now, let's say you don't want to put the field names in. If you're going to enter all the data right off from the bat, well, you can just enter all those. Just make sure it's in the correct sequence. Notice that, like I said, that this is a sequence. So first name is always first, last name is always second, and so on and so on. So to do this, I have to give it the first name first, the last name second, just like it was defined up above. And of course, let's say if I'm missing a piece of data, well, compiler's not going to know how to handle that, so this should throw an error. Too few of values. But the important thing to remember with structs is it's a composite type. It's something you get to create, so you get to choose all the different fields that go into it. And it just gives you the power to control the composition of your own data types. So there's a lot of power in that, and it's there to make your life a lot easier. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.